It is Jeff's almost favorite day of the year, as the World Baseball Classic is almost coming to an end, but much to his surprise or excitement, we will not be talking World Baseball Classic today. We'll be talking about the Chicago White Sox. Will they be a tough cookie for the Guardians to crack this year, or will they crumble? It's a Locked On Guardians, Locked On White Sox crossover edition. Stay tuned.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a crossover edition, Locked On Guardians, Locked On White Sox, a rivalry edition. I want to thank you for making Locked On Podcasts your first podcast today and every day, wherever you get podcasts, and remind you that we have your team covered every day. So we're debating what cold open to do, to give you some behind the scenes here. And I had one to go as well. So instead of doing a cold open, I'm going to throw this stat out. Now, the Chicago White Sox and the Cleveland Guardians / Indians / Browns / Broncos / Naps, however many former Cleveland nicknames we want to slash in there, actually have like a long, rich history of players who have played for both sides. You immediately probably think about Minnie Minoso, who Cleveland traded the White Sox and traded back for, and then traded, 3 trades involving Minnie. Early win, and then there's the side of it, the Jack McDowell's of it. But I thought I'd throw it to you two. I was going through and looking for the player who has played the most games and the player who appeared for both teams who has played the least games. Do either of you have any guesses on? I don't expect anyone to get the second one. It is kind of interesting. But do either of you know who is the player who has played the most combined games for the White Sox and the Guardians?
Most, I would say Jim Thome.
And you nailed it.
That makes me sad.
Yeah, it's Jim Thome.
That makes me sad.
Yeah,
no, it's
and around Chicago, White Sox, he's the legend, White Sox legend, Jim Thome, which I refuse to lean into now that he's got a statue up by you guys.
No, it's him, Minnie Minoso, and then Omar Vizquel. But it is kind of funny. Like, if you're a fan of the 90s Cleveland baseball team, both Alomar brothers played for the White Sox and the Guardians. Albert Bell, Manny Ramirez, Kenny Lofton, Jim Thome, like literally everyone who played on the 90s.
Bartolo Colon.
Yeah. And then even you go back to some of those other guys,
Albert
like
Bell.
Yeah. And even someone like Mike Garcia, who was the really good player, kind of one of those best player most people don't know about in Cleveland history. He pitched for the White Sox, and they had a rich trading history. I don't expect either of you know who the guy is who's appeared in 3 total games, and that's his entire big league career. In that guy is Jake Stryker. Interesting because he was part of the Minoso back to the White Sox deal, where the Guardians got Norm Cash, who they then flipped for Derek Dietrich's grandfather to the Tigers to help the Tigers become a great team. But Stryker is interesting because he's the only player in Major League Baseball history out of Heidelberg College, a small D2 college in Ohio. So just a fun random fact as well. He played a total of 3 games in his career, 2 with Cleveland, 1 with the White Sox. But yeah, that's even Rocky Colavito. That's another one who I didn't know. Like it is interesting. These two teams have a very rich history, which I'm in my early 40s. Chicago was like a team I knew from afar for most of my childhood before they were in the same division. Frank Thomas, for about an hour after the show yesterday, Justin and I were talking about like how Ken Griffey Jr. was set kind of a standard of coolness in the early 90s, but like number 2 in baseball during that time to me was Frank Thomas. Like he was the guy from a distance. I know the rivalries have been there recently, but am I wrong in feeling like these teams really didn't have a rivalry until an AL Central began?
Yeah, I for me growing up, it was just those 90s, Cleveland teams. Boy, they were problematic. I think that's why our, general manager at the time, Kenny Williams, just tried to get as many old, Cleveland, players. We had everybody except for Carlos Baerga. When you went off that list, I mean, we had them all except for him. And, just looking at that team and, in 1994, the Sox, before the strike, they were on their way, but they were only up on Cleveland by like a game or something, by 2 games. So, if the Sox weren't finishing, Cleveland, I felt like was right there. So yeah, and you go back to Bill Veeck. I mean, Bill Veeck had, experiences with Cleveland and Chicago, of course. Terry Francona was in the White Sox system. He, I think, managed Michael Jordan, if I remember that documentary correct. So
and Tito played for both. His dad played for both too, as
absolutely.
Well.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a sneaky amount of history between the two.
Should we probably introduce ourselves, by the way, before we
who needs introduction?
Here? Yeah, I'm Jeff. I'm almost said I'm
You're
Jeff.
That's
our April Fool's Day episode.
Okay, we're gonna switch. You're gonna hit
Justin
on the World
Latta.
Baseball Classic, and
I'm out until this thing's over. Yeah. I'm Justin Latta. That's Jeff Ellis. That's Nick Murawski from Locked On White Sox, and I guess the first question we have to ask Nick about the White Sox this year is, how many wins is a manager worth? I guess that's the first question you're going to find out the answer to this year.
Yeah, that's always an interesting conversation, right? Manager war. And I believe that the White Sox will be much better prepared. They will be a fundamentally sound team. At least that seems to be the effort this spring training, and everything that Pedro Grifol has said this offseason. I love the coaching staff that he's surrounded himself with. I really feel like he's been able to handpick who is going to be with him. And not surprising, there are a couple guys from Kansas City. I didn't know much of Pedro Grifol, despite his long tenure with the Kansas City Royals. I thought it was a surprising decision, but his baseball resume speaks for itself. The amount of players that have come out this offseason have said this is the best spring training I've been a part of. It has been very, player directed, manager facilitated. He is big on communication. He asked players early on, what do you want to see in spring training? And so how many wins? That's tough to really, we're going to find out for sure. They were 81-81 last year, and a lot of predictions, from FanDuel and other spots, they don't think much of what Pedro Grifol could bring, but we here in Chicago, Sox fans have been really surprised with the good vibes, so to speak, that have been coming out of Glendale, Arizona. And the more more quotes you read from Pedro Grifol, I have gotten more excited about what he could bring to this ball club.
I feel like I kind of wonder, like, we, obviously everybody else made a big deal out of it outside of Chicago. You guys had to live through it, but like, I don't know, did it get overblown, that entire situation, and replacing the manager? Like, was everybody outside of Chicago making a bigger deal out of it than what it probably was, just because of how things unfolded last year, considering like the White Sox were a favorite?
It was an absolute embarrassment last year. I mean, it'll go down as one of the worst seasons in my lifetime. I mean, the Sox have over 120 years of history, so that's difficult to say it was the most disappointing ever, but I would say top 5. Look, Tony LaRussa should have never been the manager of the Chicago White Sox. I mean, it's well documented here locally that Jerry Reinsdorf tried to right a wrong. He got rid of LaRussa back in the 80s, and we got bounced in 2020. Ricky Renteria, I think, should have still stayed as the manager, given him one more shot with a solid team in 2021. Yes, they won the division in 2021, and I want to give LaRussa some credit. There was a lot of stuff going on injury wise for the Sox in 2021. He had to navigate his way around, but we also had guys that really stepped up production. Was it all LaRussa's fault in 2022? Of course not. We got bit by the injury bug again, but there are a lot of articles that are coming out now, namely one from Bob Nightingale from USA Today recently, with some players like Lance Lynn saying, look, LaRussa needed daily naps. He was speaking so softly we couldn't even hear him throughout the year. We knew that there was the heart issue going on, but I think that there were other things going on, and we'll just never know because LaRussa was that type of guy. The change needed to happen. Miguel Cairo came in. we got hot for a while there. It looked like, he really hit a nerve with the White Sox. And then the nail in the coffin was when Cleveland came to town and just completely ate our lunch in that sweep. And that was it. But, I was surprised that they went with Pedro Grifol. I thought with this caliber of team, still the window's open for this White Sox team. I thought they were definitely going to get somebody that had recent managerial experience. And Grifol's never managed, at the big league level. I mean, he's been involved in a lot of decisions for a long period of time, knows the AL Central very well, knows us very well, and, can take guys aside and say, look, this is what I've seen from you, on the other side of the dugout. So, it was nationally, I'm sure people were like scratching their head, like, why Tony LaRussa and what was he doing, intentionally walking guys with 2 strikes, this, that, and the other. Locally, as Sox fans, we were absolutely enraged. It had to end, and I'm glad it did.
Yeah, I think it's definitely one of those things. When I looked at the hire, I did not know as much about Pedro Grifol, but I think the bilinguality is one of those things that is so very important, and something we will be seeing more of in managers. And I think that's one of those things that definitely stood out with this White Sox team. Speaking of things that stand out, let's take a moment here and take a quick break to talk about one of our fantastic sponsors. And today, our new sponsor, one of our returning sponsors, always love it when a sponsor comes back, is LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. So head over to LinkedIn, create a job, add the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience, so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. So I small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. Right now, head to LinkedIn Jobs to help you find the qualified candidates you want to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonmlb. That's linkedin.com/lockedonmlb to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Okay, I'm sure, Justin, you got something else you're ready to fire up and go with?
Yeah, I guess from the outside looking in, just how do you think the Guardians or the White Sox, what do they, I don't know. I don't want to say what do they have to do to catch the Guardians, because it's not like the Guardians are heavy favorites or this team that's projected to win all these games and nobody can chase them down. But on the outside, just after last season, what do you think the White Sox are changing the most in order to dethrone the Guardians, I suppose?
Well, one of the things that, was so irritating for White Sox fans during Sox Guardians games, and there were other moments, is when the Guardians did such a nice job of taking advantage of our weaknesses. And 2 big weaknesses for the White Sox were our corner outfielders. They were 2 guys that are not outfielders. Andrew Vaughn and Gavin Sheets had no business being in the outfield. But that is the way the front office decided to play it last year. And, the Guardians, other teams, they took extra bases. They ran on those guys' arms. That was just, it was almost like, here, this is what you need to change in the offseason. You need to get corner outfielders that are actual outfielders. Sox were bottom of the barrel defensively. We did not have a single player hit over 18 home runs. And Sox Park, Guaranteed Rate Field, is a very homer-friendly ballpark. So that is ridiculous, to not reach that. Yes, we had injuries. How are we going to, overtake the AL Central? I mean, like everybody, but I think really with the White Sox, we need to stay healthy. I need to see Luis Robert, Yohan Moncada, Eloy Jimenez play in at least 130 games. Okay, maybe 140. If you could get to 150, watch out. I would say that would be something we just haven't seen. We don't even know some of these guys' ceiling because they just have not played in a lot of games together. Can Giolito have a bounce back year? I mean, that's the big question. This is his walk year. So our starting staff, I have a lot of faith in. Cease, Lynn, Kopech, Giolito, Mike Clevenger. We'll see what's going to happen with him in our fifth spot. But I think it's winning on the margins. I think the Sox just they can't beat themselves. They have to play fundamentally sound baseball. They need to be aggressive on the base paths. It'll be interesting to see if Billy Hamilton makes the team. He'd be a huge threat later in the game to put some pressure on the opposition. But just play sound baseball. Chemistry is huge too. Pedro Grifol is pushing chemistry culture. It just didn't feel like the Sox liked each other last year or enjoyed playing the game, and get back to enjoying that. And Elvis Andrus is a guy that I'm so glad he came back into the fold for the White Sox. He's a great clubhouse guy, and
Guardian killer. He is the only team he is, even back to Texas. He is a Guardian killer. He is
his only mistake last year. The first time he ever made a mistake against Cleveland was that comment he made about the whole cookie crumbling thing. That was like the first time in his career he did something that helped Cleveland versus hurting them.
No, for whatever reason, he just plays super well against Cleveland.
He took on a leadership role for this White Sox team with Tim Anderson going down late in the year. And, he said after the season ended, look, I might have to change a position, which he is. He's going to be going to second base, but I want to come back. I want to come back with this team. So, that's kind of the long of it. I think the short of it is just they got to clean up their mistakes. They've got to play sound baseball and, ball go far, team go far, stay healthy.
Just real quickly, just to go around to your point about the home runs, just to give some context. According to Baseball Savant, number 2 park in home runs by park factor. So Great America is won by a significant margin. Colorado Coors Field is down at 6. Not by between 2 and 3, it's close between Guaranteed Rate and Dodger Stadium. So that is very noticeable. Though it's also interesting is it's one of the worst for doubles. So it's either home runs or singles. Yeah. Don't want to build a team for speed in the gaps there.
You guys, I don't think, hit a ton of home runs. And I think that was kind of the aggravating thing from Sox fans is like, look at this Guardians team. Look what they're doing. They're just out hustling us. They're getting the extra base. Situational hitting is huge. They're putting the opposition on their heels. And it's not like we have to constantly hit home runs, but when the opportunity presents itself with situational hitting and 2-out hitting and men on with runners in scoring position, you got to take advantage of that. And that's what I hope they can get back to.
Yeah, the White Sox hit 22 more home runs last year. They had 22nd in baseball to Cleveland being 29th.
Yeah.
So
unbelievable.
I would have assumed that gap was a lot bigger. But I mean, that goes to your point, though. You have to build your team to the ballpark you're playing in 81 times a year. That doesn't mean you can neglect other parts of your ball club. Like you said, you have to be fundamentally sound. You got to do all the right things, but you play in the same ballpark 81 times a year. You play everywhere else a fraction of that. If you don't build your team to win in your own ballpark, you're going to struggle a lot because that's where you are most of the time. And I guess, I would have assumed the White Sox had a lot more home runs, but probably that had to do with health. And, when you don't do the other stuff, when you're not hitting home runs, it's hard to maintain pace.
It is. They are literally below average in singles, doubles, and triples in that park. Singles basically about average, but doubles and triples well below average. So that is it. You need to build that team for home runs.
Yeah, and we haven't had a lot of speed on this club, and then it's just healthy speed. Luis Robert, he's been hurt over the last couple years. And so, I mean, basically what our general manager, Rick Hahn, pitched to fans in November, right before the winter meeting in December, is we're banking on health and we're banking on players returning to accustomed levels, essentially the back of their baseball cards, as he likes to say. And that to me and to a lot of fans, just it did not sit well. Eventually they did pop for Andrew Benintendi, and but banking on that, everybody's banking on that. Every team is hoping that their guys can get back to healthy form and return to accustomed levels. So I don't think that was the strategy. But the fact that we haven't seen guys like Moncada, Jimenez, and Robert all play together for 130, 140 games. Boy, if we could get that, that would be pretty special.
Yeah, we were talking too. I think I wonder, and the White Sox are still a young team. It's not like they have a lot of old guys, but like we were suggesting when we were doing a crossover with Brandon of Locked On Twins that the Guardians were the youngest team in baseball. Is there some connection between being young and staying healthy? Like that generally, I don't know. I'm not sure if there's some kind of connection there, but the Guardians seem to have. I don't want to jinx it here on March 21st. And then
I will say Eloy is 26, Luis Robert is 25, and those were maybe the two most hurt guys for them a year ago.
Yeah. So maybe our theory doesn't stand up that youth buys you health.
Yeah. Eloy Jimenez dropped maybe 20 plus pounds this off season. He said he wanted to get back to a comfortable weight from, his minor league days. You could tell it too. He does, they'll take some pressure off his knees. It doesn't mean he should be out in the outfield. He should be our designated hitter, which I think that's something that I think a lot, excites a lot of Sox fans. Oscar Colas can break camp, which I think he will. He's been having a monster spring. And he can play right field. He's a proven right fielder. And we've got Andrew Benintendi in left with Robert in center. Then Eloy Jimenez, he can be our DH. And if he could just stay, like, he's not on the team to win a gold glove. He'll never win a gold glove. You're on this club for your bat. And when he focused just on designated hitter towards the end of last season, everybody saw it, including the front office. Like, wow, this guy can stay on the field. And he's dangerous when he could play a long string of games without having to take a breather because of leg soreness or this, that, and the other from playing in the outfield.
Before we wrap up today's episode, this crossover edition, I know Jeff's got his favorite guys he wants to talk about first.
Yes, that would be, in terms of favorite guys, we're talking favorite sponsors. Those are our good friends over at Built Bar. I'm a fan of Built Bar. I don't traditionally love protein bars, but I do enjoy Built Bar. They're right now doing their March Madness. And for you White Sox listeners who haven't heard this before, I will tell you which one I think you should buy from each of these matchups. Banana cream pie puff, peanut butter brownie bite, peanut butter brownie. They do peanut butter well. Cookie dough puff, cookie dough bar. Can't go wrong with either. I would lead bar. Coconut marshmallow puff or coconut. This time we lead to the puff. Churro puff, salted caramel. Churro puff is one of the best puffs in my humble opinion. Brownie batter puff or coconut brownie chunk. Well, coconut brownie chunk won it all last year. Lemon dip cheesecake puff or the double chocolate. Go double chocolate. Mint brownie puff versus mint brownie. It's the only one I haven't tried, so I can't give you one there. And maple donut versus cookies and cream. Vote cookies and cream, I would say. And remember, if you go to BuiltBar.com, use that promo code LOCK15 to save 15%. That's a better deal than you get right now if you enter their contest. You only get 10% off there, so use the promo code LOCK15 to save. And if you want to try it before then, head to Walmart, head to Sam's Club, go to the pharmacy aisle, and try the best tasting protein bar that I personally have ever tried. That's BuiltBar.com, promo code LOCKED, or heading to Walmart or Sam's Club today, tomorrow, soon.
All right, Nick. So from the outside looking in, what questions do you think White Sox fans will have about the Guardians? What is the view on the Guardians from the outside, from White Sox fans and in White Sox camp, do you think?
Well, we saw Tristan McKenzie recently, and he's pitched really well against the Sox, especially last season. Saw him briefly in spring training last week. He looked pretty sharp. I mean, Shane Bieber, he's been always tough with us. I guess, White Sox fans are confident in the starting pitching. So I guess it would be, how do you feel Cleveland's starting pitching matches up? Like, do you feel strong 1 to 5 or are there some shaky spots?
Yeah, we did touch on that with Brandon a little bit because we said the Twins rotation probably 1 through 5 right now, like with who the Guardians are going to roll out to start the year. The Twins rotation is probably better, and I would say the White Sox, if they get a return from Giolito to where he was, and if Kopech can deliver on his promise, they might be better 1 through 5. I think it's 1 and 2. I think Cleveland has the best starting pitchers in the division, 1 and 2. After 1 and 2, it's a bit dicier.
And I think the White Sox can compete at 1-2 though. With Cease,
yeah, I mean,
and there's like that's the thing.
Cease Lynn probably. Yeah.
Lance Lynn had his ups and downs. I think the White Sox, like the top 3, definitely scare me. And if Kopech can stay, healthy a full year, like Clevenger looked bad a year ago.
Yeah,
we don't even need to talk about anything else. He didn't pitch well. He hasn't pitched well since 2020. If we're being honest, you're expecting a guy this year who's 3 years out from that. I personally think there are better options at the cost that they gave him.
Yes.
I honestly think bringing Cueto back would have been a better addition personally.
Absolutely.
I think Cleveland's one advantage maybe in this, though, when you compare them to the White Sox and to the Twins, is Cleveland's got 5 really interesting pitchers in AAA or AA right now. And Plesac and Savale have had health issues. They're kind of nearing the end. Shane Bieber is going to get traded after this season. We all know that. McKenzie's the guy. Quantrell is what he is. He's like his uncle, right? Just a solid guy you can count on.
Dad?
Is it his dad? I always get confused because So Plesac, it's Plesac's uncle. When Quantrell and Plesac were pen arms with Toronto is what I think about. But so it's like he's dependable, but he's nothing spectacular. So for Cleveland, it's kind of like, I don't know if I want to call it a bridge year with pitching, but to a degree it is. It's that next generation is really looking good. There are 2 or 3 that have health issues, but they already have one of those guys on the 40-man. 2 more are going to have to get added this offseason. And then the 2 guys who don't need to be added, Tanner Bybee and Gavin Williams. We had the Bally's reporter Andre Knott on recently, and he was like joking about how they were trying to hide these 2 guys from Terry Francona because they didn't want Francona to see them because he thought they'd want to add them now. They're looking that good. So Cleveland, I think 1-5 is the weakest of the 3. I think at the top, Chicago. I think 1 through 3, Chicago beats Cleveland. But I think, the White Sox, I could be wrong. It's like most of their top prospects outside of Noah Schultz, who they just drafted out of high school last year, is far away, are hitters. So I think Cleveland's one advantage is just that pitching depth that is right on the cusp.
Yeah, I say Schultz is probably the most exciting. I mean, we've got guys like Norge Vera, Sean Burke.
I like Burke. I do like Burke.
Burke could be, if something happens, and if we need a 5th, Burke could step up. Davis Martin was the guy last year. Burke, Matthew Thompson, but I think Burke would be probably the guy to look at. Colson Montgomery is the guy that everyone wants to talk about as our potentially future shortstop, second baseman, depending on what happens with Tim Anderson. If he does become a White Sox player for life, I doubt that Jerry Reinsdorf makes that happen, but that might be for a whole nother separate conversation. So aside from, how our pitching matches up, I think, do Cleveland fans realize how dangerous Jose Ramirez is to the Chicago White Sox? Like, I mean, do you guys get that? Because every time he comes up to bat, I mean, I'll be on like White Sox Twitter and it's just walk Jose Ramirez. Do not pitch to Jose Ramirez. And then he'll hit a bomb. And it's just like, why did you even give him anything to hit? It happens all the time.
I remember I was leaving for vacation in 2019 and Jose had just come back from the hamate injury, and Cleveland was still fighting for a playoff spot at that time. It was pretty bleak. They were kind of out of it, but they still had a fighting chance. And he comes back and hits that grand slam in his first at bat back. 0 rehab. The minor leagues were over, so he couldn't go and rehab the injury. Next at bat, he hits a 3-run homer, or I think it's a 2-run homer. I can't remember, but it's 6 RBIs or 7 RBIs in one game. They win that game, but that turns out to be Jose Ramirez's last game of the season that year. But I'll always remember that moment right there. But that kind of was Cleveland summed up for a little bit there in that bridge era where it was like Jose Ramirez can kill you, but nobody else can. So he won a game by himself that night, and then he got hurt, and then that was the end of their season. So hopefully that doesn't happen anymore. But you're absolutely right. He has done some things to the White Sox over the years. I kind of figured it would be more of a Josh Naylor tilt this time around, but
we do not like Josh Naylor on the south side of Chicago. That's for sure. And I'm sure he has no love for White Sox fans or for the Sox in general. So that's a guy to be looking for. You guys got Josh Bell but Jose Ramirez is just, that's the bar right now for just White Sox killers, so to speak.
Speaking of Guardians killers, you guys signed Brian Shaw. Glad to see that he couldn't come back to Cleveland. Man. I can't not talk Brian Shaw.
Yeah.
I assume he's got no chance of making this team, right?
He's had an interesting spring. I think he's got 7 or 8 innings logged. He's given up 0 earned runs, I believe.
Wow.
So he's got a lot of innings on that arm, though. So we don't need another right-hand reliever, but it was interesting bringing him in. We'll see what happens with some of the guys that we have that are kind of more of the lock. He to me, he's more of on the fringe, but I don't have him penciled in on my bullpen.
How hard is he throwing right now? Do you know? Has there any reports?
I haven't seen any reports. It's so difficult, there's nothing on the screen. You kind of just have to rely on, you're just relying on broadcasters. And I haven't heard a number, but I like his line, and he came in today's game and cleaned up some stuff and was pretty good. So, I mean, he's getting work. He's being able to showcase, but I don't think he had like a strong chance, but you never know. There's a couple guys on this team that, prognosticators were saying, look, I think this guy's going to break with camp as a righty arm, kind of a dark horse. And they have not had a very good spring at all. So we'll see what Grifol and Ethan Katz want to do.
All right. I want to go around real quick before we wrap the show up. I know we're kind of late already, but in a sentence, why do we hate our team? So who wants to say why they hate their team in a sentence first?
I can go. I could kick it off since I'm the guest.
Okay.
Franchise-wise, I hate my team because of our owner, Jerry Reinsdorf, and how absolutely cheap he is. However, I love our team because of the rich history, and specifically this year, I love our team for the potential and what they could be if they stay healthy.
Before I jump in, I gotta say that's one of those things. As much as we do complain at points about the penny pitching in Cleveland, I think White Sox fans would probably switch owners if we asked.
Yeah,
because I bet Jacobs would, not Jacobs. I know Jacobs would have spent, but I bet Dolans would probably spend more than Reinsdorf. And
hey,
here's what I love:
what a sign saying "sell the team, Larry,"
and he stays the heck out of the way. He is not like, we know management did not want to hire LaRussa. We already talked about this, but he went over their heads. And that is the one thing Dolan never does. That's why we get to keep. That's why, Antonetti did not go to the Mets.
Yeah.
Or not Antonetti, right. Chernoff.
Chernoff, right.
What do I hate? The thing I hate about my team is that no matter how good they are, they're always the third team in town. Even when there's teams that, really don't deserve much attention, they're always third. So it's not even about that. And I know maybe this will get people mad because there are people get super defensive, but it's a well-run team. I wish they got more support. And what I love about the team is I love that front office. I mean, there's a reason why it gets rated all the time. There's a reason why like every team has a few guys from Cleveland, and that front office is maybe the best front office in sports, just in terms of like its consistency and what's going on and how they seem to always be ahead of the curve. And we talk about, like, on this podcast, some of the last few drafts, some of the guys they have drafted who have immediately had like 4 or 5 mile an hour additions to their like the whole, the way it's all integrated is huge. Yeah.
I'll keep it quick. I hate it because they stick with guys too long because they can't afford to replace their mistakes. So they bring guys in, or even if it's prospects or other guys, sometimes they stick with them too long. They try to give them the benefit of the doubt, and sometimes that burns them pretty bad. But overall, I do like them because they do draft and develop well for a team that doesn't spend any money, and they should spend more than they do. I'm not saying they should have a Yankees or a Dodgers payroll, but a nice $100 million every year would be nice, and just be consistent with that. And that could go a long way to a team that knows how to churn through a great minor league system. Nick, any final thoughts about White Sox Guardians in 2023 before I bug Jeff with the second to last World Baseball Classic update?
I think fans have gotten more and more optimistic, I believe, as spring training has gone on. There are still a lot of fans that are like, I'll believe it when I see it that these guys can stay on the field. But if the Sox can really stay healthy, there is a chip on these guys' shoulders, and I think the new manager and the new coaching staff will have them prepared to play some good baseball early on. Make sure it's urgent in April and May. Can't win the series in April and May, but you could lose it, and I think they're going to be playing some better baseball early on, and then maybe who knows what can happen throughout the summer.
Guardians and White Sox first game May 16th in Chicago. So got a whole month of baseball to get warmed up before these two teams see each other. Jeff, are you ready for the second to last World Baseball Classic update?
I'm ready for them to be done.
Oh, man. Well, I want the World Baseball Classic to go on forever. I'm watching Japan, Mexico, and Mexico just took the lead. It's late in the game, and man, this has been a great game. Randy Rosarino's fun, and there's no Guardians left. I don't know. Is there any White Sox left in the World Baseball Classic? Is this it? Oh, Tim Anderson.
Tim Anderson and Lance Lynn. I don't know if he's
Yeah.
going to get any action, but yeah, Tim Anderson's been playing pretty regularly.
Well, I hope they all stay healthy, and I hope the final two games are game plus the 2 innings left when we're recording this are awesome because Japan, Mexico has been awesome. Long live the World Baseball Classic. Much to Jeff's dismay.
And then maybe not as much fun for White Sox fans, but we always end our podcast one way, which is thank you for listening. Remember to rate and review, download, it helps. Subscribe, like, hit the bell, all those fun things. We haven't done a check-in in a while, so I can tell you that for Locked On Guardians, we're almost to 1,400 subscribers, so join in if you have not. And go Guardians, go.